I like 4 a.m. I can hear myself think, right? We get so busy in the course of a day that it's just everybody always needing things from us and our phone always going off and insanity of gadgets and devices and people and traffic and noise. But 4 a.m, nobody needs you. It's peaceful. It's dark. I love it. I'm on a kick, going to bed at 7, up at 3:45. What time do you get up? Here we are, second episode, The Joyful Life Guide. How's it been going? I've had a crap 2 weeks. Here's what happens. The tests just arise, right? When you commit to something, the universe goes, oh yeah? Really? Is that really your plan? You think you're going to talk to people about joy and what that means, in our daily lives? Really? Okay, well, how about this? And then everything falls apart. I had to work really hard to choose joy since the first episode, and that's okay. That's my point with the title of the show, The Joyful Life Guide. I'm not bringing you butterflies and rainbows and peace and love. I'm not really interested in those conversations. What I'm interested in is digging in and getting our hands dirty with situations that we all face in our own lives and how to navigate that with remembering that joy is a choice and we can always connect to it in any given moment. So I guess my time since we were last together has been exactly what I needed. So here we are. I'm checking in with you for a moment before I share the episode, which is a talk I gave this week for the California Association of Health Facilities. Nursing home staff from all over came together for their summer conference, and they asked me to be a guest speaker. So I spoke to 500 people, and I'm sharing the talk with you here today. This is why I designed the show this way. I wanted the freedom to go with the flow of so many things happening in life. So I didn't want a timeline. This is not a niche show with guests every week or some gimmick that I have to stick to. Although I have confirmed some super exciting guests coming up. But we can take this anywhere we want. So today's an example of that. But first, we have to pick our angel card. Hello, okay? Everybody think of each other. See what our collective vibe is today. I'm thinking of you all. I'm holding you in my heart. Our angel card is harmony. How perfect. There's 3 angels singing together. That's the picture on the card. We're all harmonizing. Beautiful. And I'm going to leave you with this. This is your joy work. I call it joy work with my clients, not homework. We're not 5 years old. I'm not your teacher. We're not in school. This is your joy work. Yesterday, I had an interview with an XM radio show in Canada about the new podcast. And he asked me a great question, which is something I talk about with clients all the time. He said, are joy and happiness the same thing? And I said, no, Jeff Samet, the host, I don't think they are. I think we get in trouble when we talk about happiness as a blanket statement. Are you happy? We're always asking each other, oh yeah, I'm really happy. How are you? Oh, I'm so happy. I don't know what that means. Happiness is wonderful, of course. We love feeling happy. It's important. Of course we love feeling happy. But I think we get in trouble when we refer to it as like a state of mind. Everything in life is fleeting and impermanent, and you can't be a mood. You can't be happy all the time. You can't be sad all the time. You can't be angry all the time. Yes, we have those emotions. We're many things, not just one thing. So to just be happy would be like describing a rainbow as just the color green. In acting, we talk about you cannot play a mood. You can't act a mood. That's bad acting. If somebody's happy all the time, that's bad acting. It's bad acting if you're sad all the time, We have that in children's movies like Inside Out, which is a movie I love, and I just saw the second one in theaters, but it's not truthful. It's a mood. And we have many moods. They come and go. Moods are as impossible to hang on to as trying to grip a cloud. So happiness and joy are not the same thing. Joy comes from a different place than happiness. Joy seems to me, I'll speak for myself, to be from a soul level where you might not necessarily be happy, but you can still find your joy in the moment. I might be devastated over grief, but I can still choose joy. I don't know if I could get to happiness, but joy seems to me to nourish on a deeper level and come from a place that's not so jostled by the sensory experiences of life. And that's the question I'm posing to you now. I'm bringing pleasure into the equation because pleasure is also an interesting part of that dynamic. Pleasure, joy, happiness. And because of what I just said about joy, I chose that word very purposefully for the title of my podcast because it is the most interesting, doesn't imply happiness all the time, which is phony. If somebody's happy all the time, they're lying, and I don't trust them. It's not truthful. We're many things. We're the rainbow. We're not just one color. And I think joy encompasses all the colors from dark to light, the intricacies of humans. I think pleasure really is tied in with the sensory experiences. Eating a piece of delicious cake brings us pleasure. I don't know if I get joy from eating cake, but I definitely get pleasure. So here's the joy work. I want you to think about these 3 concepts. Now, if you're a journaler like me, put them down on the paper. I want 3 columns: happiness, joy, pleasure. I want you to think of things and put them into each category. I want us to separate out these 3 concepts to see the differences. And I want to know what you come up with. Does the birth of your child go into the pleasure column? Does it go into the happiness column? Does it go into the joy column? Does eating a delicious cupcake go into the happiness column, the pleasure column, right? Falling in love might be all 3 of those things. Does good sex, which column does that go into? Is that necessarily joyful? I don't know if I've ever had joyful sex. I don't know. I don't really know what that means. But I've definitely had pleasurable sex, right? Getting a new kitten, is that pleasurable or is that joyful and happiness? Is getting your nails done or getting a massage or going on a silent retreat or walking through the park, cuddling with your dog, does that bring you pleasure or is that more in the joy and happiness realm? I'm really interested to see what you come up with. So without further ado, please enjoy the talk I gave at the summer conference for the California Association of Health Facilities, skilled nursing care professionals from all over who I so enjoyed meeting, and I really hope that our talk helps you in some way in your life. Enjoy.
Joining us today to share more about this motivational and deeply moving experience is Lucy Walsh, author of Remember Me as Human, what 3 final days with my grandmother taught me about truly living.
Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. I am Lucy Walsh. I am the author of Remember Me as Human. I have to thank you as a whole for your work. I have had family in skilled nursing facilities and private nursing care my entire life. And whatever aspect of this work you're in, you are all warriors in this room with an intense dedication to the well-being of others, and I thank you so deeply. Your work is very technical. I couldn't help but overhear that meeting before this, and it sounded like another language. There's a lot of protocol to what you do. There's a lot of hoops to jump through. Yeah, your work is very, very technical. I get that. And that's a big reason why you're here at this conference. That's what you're discussing. But you and I are going to do something different in our time together, okay? Are you ready? Do you trust me? I want to make this personal, okay? We are going to take this away from the work, and we're going to make it about you. We're going to venture into your personal lives and focus on you for a change. I want you to close your eyes and think of a loved one who has died. I want us all to say their name out loud on the count of 3. Let's bring them into this room with us, okay? 1, 2, 3. George.
If you could go back and ask them one more question, what would it be? Today I want to tell you the secret to asking our questions while we still have the chance. So in 2010, I sat with my 97-year-old grandmother, Wanda Mae Boyer, in her nursing home. Now, I gotta say, I am going to be using the term nursing home today. It's an old habit. I apologize. Skilled nursing facility. For 3 days, I sat with her and I interviewed her about her life. That would be our final conversation. She died just 4 months later. My new book, Remember Me as Human, is the story of those 3 final days with my grandmother Wanda, and how they started out as me asking questions about her life, but they became this unexpected masterclass in what it means to be truly human for all of us at every age. And I got to know her better in those 3 days than in our lifetime together. As I dove into her life, I discovered keys that unlocked doors to my life and myself. Answers to these aching lifelong questions about why I am the way I am. And I'm sharing Wanda and I's journey with you today because we all share this lifelong ache to understand ourselves better. And our answers lie in the people who we came from. But to uncover that, to make sense of that, we have to live by something that humans take for granted. Remember I said I'm going to tell you the secret to asking questions while we still have the time? Curiosity and time. I was able to capture my grandmother's story because I was curious enough to ask, and because I didn't take time for granted. I almost missed her. 4 more months and she would have been gone. I'm on this worldwide book tour for Remember Me as Human right now, and so many people come up to me and say, God, you're so lucky you got the chance to ask your grandmother questions. And I have to correct them. I wasn't lucky. I made it happen. We're not in the habit of living intentional lives, but to live intentionally, you don't wait to get lucky. You make it happen. When we die, that incredible world that exists in each of us is gone from the loved ones that we leave behind. And you see, I didn't want to be left with that question I asked you at the beginning. I didn't want to be left with unanswered questions that I wished I had asked. That was a lesson I had learned the hard way when I lost my grandfather Dale, Wanda's husband of 65 years, to the despicable disease of Alzheimer's in 2003. I didn't yet have the wherewithal to ask him things about his life and his heart that I now desperately wish I knew. But all was not lost, because I have in my possession something that has helped me know Dale deeply and has actually shaped the course of my book and my life. I have the 63 remaining love letters that Wanda wrote to Dale in World War II.
A note here that I meant to say Dale wrote to Wanda.
In 2000, when I was 17 years old, my grandma Wanda sat me on their couch and said she had something for me. She pulled from a high shelf in the closet this tattered plastic grocery bag of these 63 letters. I was shocked. I couldn't believe they were mine to keep. But she said she wanted me to have them, and it was time. I immediately knew that they were historically important. And I also immediately knew that one day I wanted to turn them into a feature film. I didn't know how to do that yet. I was only 17. But I knew one thing, that my favorite director, Ron Howard, had to be the one to do it with me. And so this is a true story. This is what my plan. I took those letters in that tattered plastic grocery bag and I carried them in my purse everywhere I went for years. In case I ran into him at the grocery store, I could, show him and pitch him the story, and he would be, yes, he'd say yes immediately. That was my plan. The letters are now safely and properly archived in a dark room, except for the one I have with me here today, which I'm going to read from you. In my book, I describe the moment that Wanda gave me these letters As we stood there, Wanda showed me how Dale had begun and ended every single letter to her in the same way. His signature opening, "Hello, my darling," and his eternal sign-off, "With all my loving kisses, your husband." During their long separation, Dale had sent 3 times as many letters, but over the 55 years since the war, many had been misplaced. The 63 surviving letters had been written over a span of just 7 months, from July 3rd, 1944 to February 6th, 1945, a brief and priceless peek at one dynamic couple's relationship during an extraordinary moment in history. When I wondered where Wanda's replies were, she told me that not one of her several hundred return letters had survived the war. Dale describes in one letter having to burn hers along the way because his infantry unit was constantly moving just behind the front lines in France, and he was unable to hang on to any excess weight. And here is this letter from July 6th, 1944, where he says, "There's one thing I really hate to do, my darling, and that is to burn all your lovely letters. I have 2 big boxes of them, and I can't say how much each one has meant to me." Crazy to think about in an age of FaceTime and texting, isn't it? They didn't hear the sound of each other's voice for 3 years. Does anybody else in here have these family heirlooms, these letters, whether it's wartime or peacetime? Raise your hands, let me see. I see somebody back there. These are so important, aren't they? To pass down. So, when I interviewed Wanda a decade later, it was in part to find out more about what her missing letters might have said. But then something else happened during that decade that acted as a major catalyst to Wanda's interview as well. I witnessed Dale's death with Alzheimer's. Let me see your hand if you've had a loved one affected by Alzheimer's. Let me see your hand. On the count of 3, let's say their names loud and clear. Let's bring them into this room with us. 1, 2, 3. Dale! Yes! It affects so many of us. And the horror of losing my grandfather to Alzheimer's was major for me. I watched him forget everything and everyone he knew. And my trauma response manifested in 2 major ways that really led to Wanda's interview and the work I'm doing today. We all process it in different ways, right? Mine was 2 major things. 1, I felt compelled to make this film about Dale's letters on a whole new level. My mission became crystal clear. I would interview anyone who had known him slightly, in the slightest, anyone he had met once, and I would try to piece together as much of his memories as I could. And I would put those memories on the big screen where they could live forever and no one would ever forget. And the second way it affected me was I didn't know where Alzheimer's would strike next. I didn't know if it would take somebody my age. I had no idea. So I went into overdrive asking questions, not just of my elders, but of all people. I thought that if I could just gather everybody's memories, that Alzheimer's could never win. So my book and my film, which is now going into being made, is my fuck you to Alzheimer's. Right? That's what we say. It has been my way of working through the pain and the trauma of watching Dale's memories ripped from him before my very eyes. I wrote in the book about it. Before Dale's slow demise, I had always regarded death as the thief of life in one fell swoop, mind and body taken all at once. But this was totally different. Here, death played filthy dirty and stole my loved one's mind long before his body, while his life was still in full swing. Like so many of us in this room who have experienced Alzheimer's, I witnessed heartbreaking scenes, and 2 really stayed with me. 1, we were all having dinner in my grandparents' house, and Dale got up from the table and he went over to the stove, and he turned on all 4 burners to high flame, and he just stood there with this forlorn look in his eye. My grandma scolded him to get back to his seat. Her fear made her angry, right? My fear made me go quiet. What does fear do to you? It does something different to us all, doesn't it? He didn't go back to his seat. He stayed there looking into the fire, and that really, really scared me. Another night, we were all in the living room. Dale got up and he went to the door and he stared out into the snowy night. Again, Grandma Wanda scolded him to get back to his seat, and he said, I can't go back to my seat. I gotta get ready. My mom's coming to pick me up. She informed him that his mother had been dead for 10 years. I was terrified. I thought he was seeing a ghost that was going to be here any second to take him away. I understood Wanda's anger. I understood that it was because she was so afraid of what was happening. And as Dale became unmanageable at home, as the Alzheimer's escalated, he was moved to the home where his mother and father had been before him, and where I would interview Wanda years later. So I've been visiting that same skilled nursing facility my entire life. You know, there's army brats. I'm a nursing home brat. When I visited that home as a kid, I felt very afraid of what I was seeing. I picked up on a lot of emotional pain. I couldn't make sense. I was overwhelmed by the enormity of this adult situation. I wanted to fix it for them somehow, and I felt powerless. There was nothing I could do to fix what I was seeing, and so all I could do was shut it out. And I think a lot of people feel that way about skilled nursing facilities. I was afraid of old age. We all are. Those visits stayed on my mind, though, and I really felt compelled to help in some way. So, in the 7th grade, I volunteered in the special education program at my school. I became a special friend, and that really helped me. Working with mentally and physically challenged people my own age helped me get more comfortable with witnessing and handling the emotions of others in these situations where specialized and sometimes medical support was needed. And then in my 20s, I volunteered as a musician in nursing homes and children's hospitals with an organization called the Art of Elysium. They were always very wary and respectful of not putting their volunteers into overwhelming situations. But I said, where do you need the most help? That's where I want you to put me. And where do you think they needed the most help? In the intensive care units and the terminally ill departments. So that's where I took my keyboard and played music. And I experienced things that gave me real experience with holding space for others suffering, yet not being able to fix it for them. 2 moments are very special to me. One, I was playing at the door of an 8-year-old girl's room. I couldn't go in a lot of these rooms. And she had 100 tubes coming off of her head, wires. Her mother was holding her in a rocking chair. And as I started to sing and play at the door, they both closed their eyes and they rocked. It was so humbling to get to be a part of that moment with them. Another time I was at the door of a 6-year-old cancer patient, and she asked me to play something fun. So I played a song, and she got up on the bed, and she was singing and dancing, and her family was laughing and crying because we all got the lesson. Here was this terminally ill little girl who didn't have long to live, but she was the one lifting everyone else up and showing them that joy was what mattered in the end. I was so grateful to be there with them, and that lesson means even more to us now that she's gone. So I didn't see how it was all connected back then, but those experiences were preparing me for going on to continue the visits with Wanda in her nursing home, and they continued to help me as I moved deeper into advocating for companionship programs in skilled nursing facilities, as I'm doing with the National Association of Long-Term Care Volunteers. This is in partnership with you all. Thank you. So I'm very happy to connect with you all today because we have a lot to do together in the future. I could now understand, after this life experience in these different situations, that old age is not the person. It's happening to the person. We're all aging in this room. It's not young versus old. We're all on this aging spectrum. And it's not us. We are all experiencing this age that we're at now for the first time. I could see how that the elderly's loved ones sometimes lost patience with them and judged them harshly and scoffed and disregarded them. But I saw through that. I saw that that's just an attempt to distance ourselves from our own mortality, which we all want to do. I became aware that aging is new for us too, like I said, not just those around us. And I realized that as we age, we need more support, more love, more humanity, more dignity, more of all the good stuff. As Paul Falkowski with the NALTCV says, we do not lose our humanity as we get older. So as I continued to visit Wanda in the homes, I now knew that I wasn't supposed to fix it for anyone. I couldn't take away their physical and emotional pain, but I could help. I could hold space for them. I could look at them. I could laugh with them. I could smile at them. I could ask their name. I could ask them questions about their life. I could converse, as all humans need to. And that gift of making a person feel human is easy to give. Man, it's the easiest thing in the world. So my work ahead in partnership with you is to inspire volunteers to join our companionship programs in skilled nursing facilities. And, the pitch goes like this. It's so easy to find your local nursing home and go down there and sit with someone for an hour. And you know what the usual response is? Oh God, I've always wanted to do that. I really wish I could, but I've got kids, my job, I'm so tired all the time. Life is just too busy, there's never time. But I think it's the real reason that I felt as a kid. I'm afraid. I don't know how to fix it for them. Who am I to make a change? It's too overwhelming. So here's my answer, and please feel free to steal it because, we all deal with talking to people about what we do in the facilities. Aging is not young versus old. We're all headed towards that horizon in the same boat. My favorite Shakespeare quote speaks to this. All the world's a stage, the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts. And some of us here today, not all of us, but some of us will someday be there in a home. And let me ask you, if it were you sitting there alone and one person came up to you and smiled at you and asked your name and asked you about yourself and had a good laugh with you and read to you or played a song, would it make a difference to you? It would mean everything. We don't have to change the world. Holding space for just one person is enough. It's also wonderful when you can affect more than one person at a time, which I experienced when I was visiting Wanda for her interview in 2010. We were having lunch in the dining room, and all the residents were together, but you wouldn't know it. The room was silent. And she said to me, go to the piano and play a song for everybody. And I said, oh my God, no. Right? That fear came up again. I don't want to bother anybody. They don't want that, She said, they don't know what they want. Just go to the piano. She was a fiery woman. She really fought hard in her skilled nursing facility to inspire others, to live while they were alive, to help themselves all they could, to not give in, not give up. She even had her own music hour every week called Wanda's Melodies. So I went to the piano and I played a song I knew, some Kelly Clarkson hit or whatever, and nobody, nothing changed. She wheeled over to me and she said, play something they know. So I racked my brain and I came up with a song from the 30s. And as I played, the whole room changed. Heads lifted, people wheeled closer, bodies started swaying. It was like they came back. And I learned a very valuable lesson in that moment. The key to human connection is not in inviting people to join you where you are. It's in meeting them where they are. I met them where they were with their music. And it was a miracle. And And it's interesting to think that I had that experience before I became a trained volunteer with the NALTCV. How I found you all in this room today, how I ended up on this stage was heaven sent. And it was because of this woman, Deanne Walters. Let's give it up for Deanne. Thank you. So I, about a year ago, had finished my book. It was going to be released in March, and I was sitting in my living room, and it was such a clear moment for me. This voice in my head said, you have got to move into this work with the platform that you have with this book release. You have got to make it go as far as you can. And I didn't know how to do that. I thought, do I create my own foundation to start to bring volunteerism into nursing homes and hold space for these people that need emotional support? I thought, no, it must already exist. I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. So I started researching. And all my research brought me to Deanne. No matter what avenue I went, in the hours that I spent on the internet, it all led me to her in one way or the other. So I called her. She didn't call me back for like a month. She thought I was joking. She thought I was a weirdo. She actually did a background check on me, you guys. Which she told me later. But when we finally did connect, I told her who I was. I said, I don't really know what I have to offer, but I'm here, and I want to get involved. She put me in touch with Paul Falkowski, National Association of Long-Term Care Volunteers, and today is so important to me that I turned down a movie role to be here. That's how important, whatever. I'm just saying, this is, important stuff, and such an honor. So I cannot end without acknowledging my gratitude and my personal connection to private skilled nursing care as well. I had the honor of helping my grandfather George, there he is, on my dad's side of the family, the opposite side of my family, my grandfather George Walsh. I had the honor of helping him through the last years and months and weeks and days and hours of his life. In 2020, he died at 97 in New York City, and I am forever grateful to our nursing staff at the David York Agency who helped us through and became like family. I was working closely with the nurses as I took care of George's emotional needs, and it taught me a great deal about end-of-life care. That's the topic of my next book, actually, soon to be announced. George was a true Renaissance man. He was a lawyer in his day. He was sharp as a tack until the very end. He was a connoisseur of the arts and travel and history and books. Every holiday when I was little, it was another book from Grandpa George. Jesus. It was so boring, but now I'm obsessed with books, and it's because of this man. When my grandma Helen died in the 90s, he moved into Manhattan, 3 blocks from Lincoln Center, so that he could be close to his ballet and his opera and his symphony, and he went every single night. Opera was his favorite. And as he entered his 90s, it became harder, but he still fought to get there, because I think to him, as long as he could make it to that seat in the audience at the opera, he was human. He had his dignity. I think opera was dignity to him. And he kept it up until he literally couldn't get there. He was in his mid-90s, and he was on foot, and he fell in the gutter, and he couldn't get up, and the police had to take him home. And that was the last time he was able to go. After that, his health declined rapidly, and I learned something. I witnessed how much we all need something to live for. That is crucial. So for me, helping George maintain his dignity was really, really important. And as his nursing care moved from 2 times a week to every other day to every day to 24-hour care, I tried my best to keep him a part of the conversation, to let him be a part of the choices that were being made about his life. I know in our work it's not always possible, I know that. But I tried. Not without a fight. He hated my guts. There was a lot of cussing, a lot of screaming, a lot of abuse, but I understood it. I understood that he was afraid. He's never been 96 before. He's never experienced his body falling apart on him. I saw through his anger. And in the end, he did make sure that me and his favorite nurse, Joanne, knew that he was grateful. I was with him until the very end, and our parting words were so perfect. It's a beautiful gift in this life if we get to have no regrets when somebody passes, isn't it? When you think, God, I did all I could. I really did my best, and we had a goodbye. I know that's a rare gift. He said to me, I'm sick of being your patient. And I said, you haven't been my patient. It's been my honor to help you through this. And all those places that we talk about going, the Louvre, the Royal Museum in London, Italy, the opera, I'll meet you there. And I continue to. As I travel the world, I meet him everywhere I go. My family and I have made it possible for his favorite seat at the opera to now have a plaque with his name on it, which really makes me happy. And look, his private nursing care costs $6,000 a month. I know this isn't possible for everybody. I'm so grateful that he got to be at home until the end the way he wanted, and I'm grateful that my family was able to do that. But this is why skilled nursing facilities are so necessary to our society. It's just crucial that we have a future of overflow of funding so that all residents and staff are taken care of and have everything they need. And I am here to support that future in any way that I can. Please call on me. So let's bring all this back to you. What's our takeaway? Number 1 is stay curious. Stay curious. Family and loved ones, don't assume we know each other as deeply as we could. Don't be so quick to judge. We put each other in these boxes so easily, right? Oh, that's just my mom. That's just the way she is. Oh, that's just my brother. He's always been that way. No. There's a world that exists inside of them. And there's a world that exists inside of you. So curiosity really begins with us. We're here for one moment in this body with these loved ones. Isn't that exciting? Isn't that worth exploring together? Isn't that worth talking about? I can't tell you how many conversations I have where the other person doesn't ask me a single question about myself. Have you ever experienced this? What's going on? What is that? I don't understand it. It's not okay. We're here for 1 second, you guys. So let's go out of this room and change that, one conversation at a time. The other thing is don't take time for granted. Share what's in your heart now. Ask your questions now. Have your conversations now. Nurture connections now. To quote my grandmother Wanda on the first page of my book, worship the ground your loved ones walk on, hun, because it's a long road without them. So cherish each other, know each other, make your time together beautiful, and keep each other's stories and memories alive in your hearts to pass on, so that when your future loved ones look to their past in search of who they are, they will find their answers in all that you left for them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lucy, for sharing with us this very powerful moment.